here on BBC Radio Leicester. Time now is 10 minutes past 8.
The sound of Leicester. AD Dayman at breakfast.
BBC Radio Leicester.
Now imagine knowing that soon you may not be able to recognise your wife or even your children who you've known all their lives. Well, that's the cruelty of Alzheimer's, and although we think of it as something that affects old people, it can be diagnosed much earlier. Well, that happened to Alex Preston from Anstey, but in his case, the diagnosis was wrong and had devastating consequences, as he told our reporter Joe Hollis.
I was having problems with concentration at work. The doctor thought I had low mood and anxiety. It spiralled from that. He sent me then to the Braggett unit to rule out any form of dementia. They tested me and then sent me to the memory clinic, but unfortunately I had 2 tests, 2 scans, and then I was diagnosed with dementia.
And how old were you at that point?
I was 54 at that point when I was diagnosed. That's when my life just was completely destroyed. As soon as you told that diagnosis, everything you've planned, everything me and Susan had planned, just went. Suddenly it just went. Work were good with me, and when they retired me.
So all your sort of normal life that you'd known just changed at that moment?
Yeah, the first day I was diagnosed, we sat in the car and cried, and I just thought of suicide.
You're sitting here now in front of me, looking well, looking healthy, don't look like a man with Alzheimer's.
I'm not.
What happened since?
7.5 years of constantly having the diagnosis reinforced by nurse visits, medication. I gave up on life. I decided I just got to try and do my best. My wife had died. She'd made me promise I'd look after the dogs. And then lockdown had come, so nobody was coming to see me. So I'd get the odd call. And then friends who would ring me say, you seem like you're doing well. And I thought it was them just being nice, And then I had an incident with my medication, which I believe was keeping me going. And I needed to see a nurse because I was bothered by my medication. And a nurse did come out to see me, and one of my friends came round here to support me through it. And she said, I think you need to see a consultant, and that's how it came about. I saw a consultant, and then it was kind of pointing out, this might be wrong. So 7.5 years I'd been going through this believing it, and to be told that it might be wrong was good, but it was terrible at the same time.
Well, the friend Alex talked about that was Nigel Leach, and Nigel joins me now. Nigel, thank you ever so much for your time this morning. You were with Alex when he had that conversation with the nurse about going to the doctors again, about getting a consultant. Nigel, what was that meeting like?
Well, it was quite unbelievable in a lot of respects, because when she initially first came into the room to speak to Alex, and obviously I was present, she found it very hard to believe that he had actually been diagnosed with dementia, because he was very, very sharp, in everything he said and what have you. And I think she was quite taken back, really, to be quite honest, that she was actually dealing with someone who had been diagnosed with dementia, and it took her a few minutes to get her head round, the fact that she was actually round talking to Alex, and that this guy had been diagnosed a couple of years previous.
And Nigel, when did you know? When, kind of Alex talks there about, people saying, wow, you're doing well, you're doing really well, mate. You're looking well, you're cracking. When did you know that something wasn't quite right?
Well, we met him in 2016 at a charity event, and he was selling some of his artwork for a charity. And we was quite shocked in the respect that he'd got dementia, well, early onset dementia. And as time went on, my wife Louise and myself were discussing it, thinking, well, he doesn't seem to be getting any worse than when we first met him. We did notice he was forgetting things, but the thing is that we all forget things. But when Alex would forget something, he would get very conscious about it, and it'd make it 10 times worse for him, because he's obviously thinking, well, I'm going down the lines of dementia, and it's going to get worse and worse. And, he didn't know what to expect. So any little mistake he made, it was far worse for him. You know what I mean? So, and we used to joke about the fact that we thought his memory was better than mine. You know, so it was quite shocking, really. To see that.
With that in mind, Nigel, you just said that, kind of like joking, saying that his memory was better than yours. I mean, the effect on this, how do you put that into context? We talk about the devastating consequences there and hearing Alex say there as well, kind of like, okay, it's great to have this misdiagnosis, but in the same breath, it's absolutely awful as well. Those things that have been kind of like magnified if he would forget something or, magnified, these little kind of, mistakes that he would make during the day. This is going to have a huge knock-on effect, isn't it?
Of course it is. I mean, the thing is, it was devastating for Alex and his wife, Susan, in the respect that she was always very stressed about him. In anything he did, I mean, he would come to music events with us and she was constantly worried about him, that he was going to be all right. She was obviously his full-time carer, so it totally ruined their lives, to be quite honest, because the thing is, it stopped them doing a hell of a lot of things, like they both like the travelling and stuff and whatever, and it just stopped everything for him. It was a constant stress for them both.
How is he at the moment, Nigel?
Well, he's very angry, to be quite honest, because the thing is, he's been done out of 7 years of his life, 7 years that he could have had real quality time with his wife, Susan. He lost his job because of it. It's affected everything, their relationship and whatever, because the thing is, they're a very loving couple, but obviously it had a knock-on effect because Alex was, obviously he's been, this devastating news that he's got dementia, and it basically just halted everything for him, and they were a couple that like to do things together. He's a multi-talented guy, he's a great artist. He plays guitar, plays bass, he had his own band. He gave up on such a lot of things because of that, because of his confidence and his paranoia as well with it,
And as his mate, as his best mate, how do you go now about trying to rebuild Alex, if you will, and to rebuild that confidence and to put your arm around him and say, come on, mate, let's try and put this right effectively, Nigel?
I think the thing is, he needs a lot of support from family and friends, obviously, but he went through the devastation of losing his wife. That on top of everything, he's absolutely devastating in itself. And obviously we had the pandemic, so, basically 2 years lockdown. He didn't really have any support from the trust. So, it's going to take a lot of recouping and trying to get him on stable footing again, because obviously he's still going through the battle of this unjust, sentence on him as such, having dementia. So it's very difficult, but all I can say at this time and moment is he has got a lot of support from his friends, and he needs good support from all that know him, really, to be quite honest. It's a hard one to say, really, because it's not a case you can just push that button and say everything's all right now. It's a case he's had to live through this for 7 years, and like I say, it's not just for misdiagnosis. It's he's going through bereavement as well. And it's a difficult one. It's a difficult one. We've just got to be there for him.
Nigel, thank you so much for your time this morning, for joining us. Nigel Leach there, friend of Alex Preston, who've been talking about this morning, this misdiagnosis that Alex from Anstey diagnosis was wrong of Alzheimer's, the devastating consequences there that it's had as well. It is under investigation at the moment. Now, for those living with Alzheimer's support, it's Dementia Awareness Week as well. If you do want any information about symptoms, about talking to someone, about getting some help, it's as simple as heading over to the internet and typing in Alzheimer's Society, and all information will come up. You tuned in to the Dayman Breakfast Show here on BBC Radio Leicester. Pleased to have you with me on this Monday morning at 20 minutes past 8. Got some really